Welcome to the latest episode of 5 Minutes of Management. I'm Frank Kalman along with Rick Bell. We've got a great episode today. We're going to talk about if video games are to blame for the lack of labor force participation in a key demographic, as well as news of GM hiring a new head of HR. The monthly June government jobs report came out recently, and the numbers showed 220,000 jobs were added to the U.S. economy. But hidden within the jobs report is a figure that is continuing to worry economists: labor force participation, particularly among young men. For those of you who don't know, the labor force participation rate is an important measure. It measures the percentage of working-age people who aren't working or looking for work. 10 years ago, about 90% of men in their prime working age were either employed or looking for work. But now just 88% are. While that dip might not seem like a lot, it actually means that hundreds of thousands of more men have given up on work over that time. But new research from an economist at the University of Chicago finds that the lure of spending time on computers, especially video games, has played a significant role. As CNBC profiled this week, the study showed that video games are responsible for about 23 to 46% of the decline in work hours for young men during the 2000s. What's fascinating about the study, however, is that it's not for lack of jobs necessarily that explain why these men aren't working in favor of playing video games. It's because wages haven't grown to the point where they find it more valuable to work instead of playing video games. Fancy that. This suggests that in order for these men to stop playing video games and rejoin the workforce, jobs are going to have to pay a lot more to make work more appealing. Rick, what's your take on this?
Video games, huh? Frank, I just find that unbelievable. Why would they stop working in order to play video games? I just find that just mind-blowing. Is that the millennial generation? Is this what's going on here? Frank, I just have to think that these young people need to go out and get jobs because there are good paying jobs. They just don't want to go out and work. I just find that unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason is video games have become more social, especially thanks to online connectivity. You're seeing more people joining communities and socializing around playing games. I think that's played a factor. I should point out that there have been a lot of pundits and people in the news media that have sort of said this study is not quite enough evidence to suggest that this is the sole reason behind men declining to work. But it is something to keep an eye on, and I agree. I think at some point, men have to realize that playing video games is not more important than working.
Get off the couch. Get out of your mom's basement. Get to work.
So Rick, what else we have going on?
General Motors recently named its new head of HR, and here's why that news is extra special. General Motors actually went outside the auto industry to find Jose Tomas, who spent time as the CHRO at health insurer Anthem. And on top of that, the 49-year-old Tomas was Global Chief People Officer with Burger King. And I just find that interesting, Frank, that Mary Barra has gone outside, the GM CEO has gone outside and bucking the typical auto industry trend of hiring from within. When you look at executives' careers after a shakeup or a round of promotions, typically you'll find that they've spent their entire careers in the auto industry. Now, is that a bad thing? Well, consider that the man Tomas is replacing, John Quattrone, was with General Motors for 42 years. And Barra is a GM lifer as well. Although she did spend time as GM's head of HR from 2009 to 2011. What also struck me is that Quattrone, in a video interview with Auto News, admitted that General Motors has gotten arrogant over the years, and also Mary Barra is determined to change the GM's workplace culture, and hopefully for the better. It's a tall task with such an institutionalized industry, but her choice of Tomas is a big step, I think, in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it's a good move. I think, you typically see people want to promote from within, and the CEO and the CHRO position is no different. But sometimes companies need to bring in outside perspective, and that appears to be what GM is doing here. So we've seen it with Ford recently, bringing in Jim Hackett from Steelcase and the University of Michigan, where he was the interim athletic director when it hired Jim Harbaugh, and we'll see if it works out for GM. But I think good move.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we've got for this week's episode of 5 Minutes of Management. Please follow us on YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter at Workforce News. And of course, for more workforce coverage, you can always visit workforce.com. For Rick Bell, I'm Frank Kalman. We'll see you next time.